All right, I'd like to first off start by thanking my scouting staff, along with many people in the building through these 30 visits, the scouting process, the all-star games, the combine. The coaches are heavily involved in the process. A lot of Zooms. They Zoomed with a lot of these prospects. Been to a lot of dinners, a lot of meetings in the facility with some of the prospects that came through, pro days, private workouts. Also, whether it's strength and conditioning coaches, the cafeteria, Pat, Dion, their staff, Lonnie, Dr. Lonnie, we put these kids through quite a process when they come through the building, and there's a lot of people involved that are critical in our decision making. So I want to thank them for that. With that being said, we feel like we're in a pretty good spot. With the draft coming up in 8 days, and there's still some work to do and some loose ends that we're going to tie up. Meetings with coaches, some Zooms. We can still do Zooms with prospects. So we're not there yet, but we're getting close. But feel good about where we are. So with that, I'll open up to questions.
Talk about still work to do. It's been reported that there's quarterbacks. Explain why the timing of it to do it so late in the process now, maybe rather than sometime earlier.
Yeah, it's a unique calendar year. I think the draft is as early as it can be, that Thursday in April being the 24th. If you're speaking specifically of Colorado, like their pro day was April 4th. That was the last one. 2 to 3 weeks after the draft, we make our calendar for the next year, and we have a process that's in place that we believe in terms of how many days we need for our meetings and medical, psychological, some of the third-party vendors that we use in terms of how the calendar goes. So with the April 4th pro day of Colorado, we were already in meetings. So when I left you guys at the owners' meetings, we started that Wednesday, and that's how the calendar is for us every year. So it was unique that a pro day was that late, and we had to stop meetings to go out to Boulder. But these private workouts have been in place, and what happens, Jordan, is a lot of times these prospects won't do privates before their pro days. So if we could have done a private workout with Shedeur before his pro day, we probably would have. But the concern there is they also have receivers, and there's a lot of receivers at Colorado. So you don't want to be that team that does a private workout with a prospect and then they pull a muscle. Or one year I was in Miami, there was a tight end at Nebraska Omaha when they had football, and he broke his wrist at the private workout, and the pro day was the next day, and all the scouts were pissed off. So you got to be conscious of that. You don't want these guys to get injured before their pro day when all 32 teams can watch them perform. So there's nothing unique about this other than the calendar is what it is this year, and we were in meetings. Some of these prospects have had 30 visits, so you're trying to connect the schedules. They're busy, we're busy, and this was the week where we could get out there and do some of these other private workouts. And we're not just doing this with quarterbacks. There's a couple other positions that we have private workouts that are coming up as well. So it's just when you're trying to put the big puzzle together, and players are coming in, they're at 30 visits. The off-season program, it takes two to be on the same page and have openings where you can get together.
Joe, what do you get out of the private workout, especially with the quarterbacks?
Yeah, we have a process in place that we've had. I mean, this dates back to when Daves and I worked together in Miami. I remember the Andy Dalton, Mallet, some of those guys. So it's a pretty thorough process in place that we believe in, and we've seen the results play out at the position. So I'm not getting into specifics with that, but it's been tested, it's true, and it's a lot of times it's panned out. Whether we didn't like a prospect, and how they projected to the next level.
Joe, you discussed right from the beginning about the importance of improving the quarterback position. You've signed a couple of veterans in Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. How important is it for the Giants to select a quarterback at some point in this draft?
With the signing of those two players, I think we put ourselves in a position where I don't think that's mandatory or something that we're our feet to the fire and we have to do. I think the two guys we signed have played a lot of ball. They've got a lot of skins on the wall, and I do think we've upgraded that room, compared to where it was a year ago. I like the two guys that we have, and Tommy's still in there, and he's won games for us too, and he's still developing. So we're happy with the makeup of the room right now.
Joe, when you look at the league-wide trends, how much does that affect or tweak or cause you to tweak your processes when you look at some of the things that the successful teams of last year maybe were able to do in terms of personnel?
What trend are you?
Like, for example, more defensive line rotation, more running back emphasis, that sort of thing. Does that, cause you to tweak your approach?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's a trends, but you look around, like you look at, division and your matchups within the division or your opponents or what's coming up, and ultimately you're trying to build the best team. But I know, again, talking about Miami again, we were in Miami and they had New England had two really good tight ends. Well, how are we going to match up against these guys? So if you have a weakness versus a certain opponent that you got to play a couple times a year, you look at that and how you're going to build your team, because ultimately you want to win your division. So not so much trends around the league, but it is a copycat league, so coaches are looking at that from a personnel standpoint. There's really good collaboration with the coaching staff and what they're looking for and what they need in order to put the best product on the field and win games.
Joe, when you go into a draft now, obviously you're going to the fourth draft that you've had. How much do you have your current depth chart, your current roster, but also project 2-3 years down the road as to what you have in the building, but also what you're going to be drafting, position-wise, what you look for? And can it be in two different silos? Is the current over here and the draft separate, or do you have to mesh them together?
Yeah, we're always looking at that, Art. That's a good question. And okay, here's where we are salary cap-wise going into 2026. Here's our players that are going to be UFAs. If there's a guy there in the second round that could maybe he's a backup year one, but then we don't have to pay somebody $20 million. You're looking at it that way. Really good player, eventual starter, where you are salary cap-wise, whose contracts are coming up. So you're always looking into the future. Hey, this is eventual successor to player X if we don't get a deal done or can't extend them. You're always looking into that. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was talking about the other day with our secondary now. I'm like, geez, like 3 years from now, they're all up at the same time, and Dexter's up at the same time. So I'm already, you're projecting down there our rookie class last year if they won a first rounder. So 3 years from now, there's a lot of guys, core guys right now that are, their contracts are up at the same time. So you try to prevent that when you're doing some deals here and there, and but we're always conscious of that, the financial aspect of it, and then how are we going to replace these players.
Joe, do you look at quarterback position different than almost any when you look at the draft as far as, the draft is 7 rounds, so you don't take every guy that you want to be a gold jacket, Hall of Fame starter. There's different levels to, depth charts and where you want guys. Do you look at quarterback as, there's no reason to take a quarterback anywhere in the draft unless you think he can start for you and be a really good player, or can you take a guy in a different round that he can be he might make our team and be a depth guy or be you know what I'm saying? Is that different? You took the quarterbacks differently than the other spots?
Yeah, and it's a little bit ties into Art's question. Just backup quarterbacks are between $4 and say $10 million, right? Whatever number you want to throw out. But so yeah, if you can get a quarterback in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, wherever it is, and he can be your backup quarterback, now you're opening up financial resources that you don't have to spend on a backup quarterback, and he can be a cost-controlled player for 4 years that's not expensive compared to what's on the open market. So yeah, it doesn't have to be, hey, this guy's got to be a starter. It'd be nice to have if it's a young backup quarterback on a rookie contract too, because when you look at what we've paid for backup quarterbacks, whether it was Tyrod, Drew, to where we're now that's money you can spend elsewhere. So yeah, and to sign a guy with upside at that position that can develop and maybe win you games, or maybe they develop into a number one. You're always looking at those scenarios.
Joe, how do you characterize this year's quarterback class?
There's some depth to it. There's good players for various reasons, different ages, different playtime experience. There's quarterbacks in this draft that'll go on and play and be starters in the league.
Are there quarterbacks of the future, so to speak?
Yeah, I would say so.
I know you said you don't think it's mandatory to get a quarterback in this draft, but how surprised would you be if you got through the entirety of this draft and didn't take a quarterback?
How surprised? A percentage or?
Not percentage. Do you going in your head, do you think it's a likelihood that you might end up with a quarterback, or you think, where do you stand on that at this point?
I don't know whatever else you're dealing with, 31 other teams and how they see their boards. So yeah, if the value matches up with what we have on a player and there's an opportunity to take any position, we'll do it. But not going to force it if it's not the right value. And again, if the board lines up when we're on the clock and that's the position that we want to go with, we'll go with it. But I'm not going to be backed into a corner on that.
How do you decide when a player is worth a risk taking it, where you might have reservations on him, but you know it's worth the gamble because there's other attributes that maybe he does hit?
Yeah, no, that's a good question too, and it's the issue doesn't change whatever it is, depending on what it is. Now, it could if it's medical. So if this guy has he's coming off a shoulder surgery, he's not going to be ready till October. Do you drop that player a little bit since you're not going to get him till week 8? That's going to get better. If a guy's not very smart or can't do something that you're going to ask him to do, or there's something that's not going to get better that maybe you're not comfortable with, maybe it's the kid has some background issues or something like that. If you drop him and say, okay, we can't pass on this guy, the issues are still the issues. So that's what we're wrestling with, depending what the issue is, and the support system and ecosystem that we have in place here with player development and the coaching staff and in the locker room. Can we handle a player with maybe an off-field issue, or maybe they're immature, or whatever it may be? We're weighing the pros and cons, and can we fix what may cause them to fall? Is the risk worth the reward? And then is that what we want to bring in our locker room?
Speaking of medical, how comfortable?
Step aside from Jacqueline, you have 250 options coming up with Evan and Tibbs. Have you made a decision on those two?
Yeah, we haven't. We'll probably wait till after the draft on that and let those guys know.
Just a quick thought. Next week the all-season program starts. Have discussions continue with Evan as far as maybe sliding over the guard.
Yeah, I haven't talked to Evan again. I'll echo what I said 2 weeks ago at the owners' meetings. Like he's going to do whatever he can do to help the organization and do what's best for the Giants. So, he's motivated. He's had a good offseason. He's been working hard. So, we're excited to get him back in here, and he's going to do whatever he can to help us.
Joe, speaking of medical, what have you heard, I guess, the most recent update on where Abdul is?
Yeah, we have that meeting tomorrow with Ronnie and his crew. So we'll have some more information. We've been in contact with, he was here on Friday. I think that was pretty well reported. So feels good. He's working out. He's running. Didn't even know he had it. He went to the combine. It was news to him. So I don't think there's going to be much room for pause there.
Joe, with Travis Hunter, who has said this week that he wants to play both positions, when you meet with the player, just how often do you discuss your fit, how you want them to fit in with you versus just kind of what they envision their fit is?
Yeah, the players ask us that all the time. How do you see me fit with your organization? So Travis is a unique individual. Again, Dave said it at the owners' meetings. You got to watch a lot of plays on him. So he's fun to watch. It's unique that the ball skills, the route ability, and then also the ability to go to the other side and play corner. Like you just don't see that very often. A lot of times, if these guys can't catch or they can't play receiver, then they get moved to DB. But this guy can do it all. So he's also he's a great kid. So it'd be hard to keep him off the field, and he's motivated to play both ways. So again, you always worried about the length of the season. With the NFL, 17 games and training camp, and you're just if he gets hurt doing something that he's not doing full time, you're going to kick yourself. But he's a unique athlete that I think will be able to do both.
What do you view as his primary position?
We're in a unique position that we have 3 good receivers, and we like our secondary right now. So that'd be our situation will be unique. So would not be afraid to play him on both sides of the ball.
How realistic do you think that is for a player to do it on both sides full time? Like he kind of.
I think it would be difficult, but he's proven that he can do it and be available. So that's the unique part. But you're always concerned with these guys. We're looking at the workloads and the yardage each day, and then to me what will have to be settled is the mental part of it, because the offense is very hard to learn, and then the defense on a weekly basis, it's not college anymore where, hey, these are our basic plays, this is our basic defense, and we're going to go play cover 3 against Kansas, we're going to play cover 3 against Nebraska. There's a lot more week to week, matchup type stuff that our coaches are doing. So just how much can you handle mentally where you can go out there and execute and they can trust you to do your job. So physically, I wouldn't doubt the kid.
When you look at Travis, most people around the league seem to say like he has all-world potential at corner. He also has all-world potential at receiver. I mean, do you share that boat where he can be that good at both spots?
Yeah, I wouldn't I wouldn't doubt the kid. I mean, he's that type of athlete, and he's had that type of production. I mean, it's insane the amount of snaps he played, amount of snaps he plays a game. Doesn't sit down, goes over, gets a drink of water, and gets back out on the field. So he's got that type of athleticism. He's got the right mindset. He's a great kid, so I wouldn't doubt him.
You talked about
The future in terms of, looking ahead, signing guys and the salary cap and all of that. When you think about potentially trading assets, to move around in the draft, do you sort of take the long view as far as not only what assets you might have in the future, but what the drafts might look like long term?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we take all that into account. Usually, if you're gonna, it depends. So, like if you're looking long term, it's you got to make sure it's a player that you really like. If you're talking about trading future assets, but yeah, we take all that into account.
Joe, when you look at a player like Abdul who made a position switch this year, is that set up ideas for you as to where he might fit in? Is there such a thing as too many pass rushers in your mind?
I don't think so. I mean, everybody watched the Super Bowl, right? Philly rushed with how many? 4 the whole game. So that's one way to do it. So yeah, I mean, if you think about any of these players, that may or may not be in the mix, as a unique player like him that played off the ball for 2 years, then has only played 1 season, off the edge, and had a really good season. Then you got Kayvon, and you got Burns, you got Dex inside. It gives you a lot of options. He's a versatile player. He's young, he's 21 years old, and exciting player to watch. But yeah, you can't have enough pass rushers.
But would you be able to find a spot for him, given that primarily I think lines up the same spots as the other guys?
Yeah, we would find a way. Yeah, we would find. It's no different than with Travis Hunter. Like we could, you got a first-round corner, and we just brought in Paulson, and we got 3 weeks. Like you figure it out. Like you got good football players. You figure out, find a way to get them on the field and utilize them.
How do you with the best player available line with the most important player to your organization, like the need that you have? Do you have to kind of balance that here?
Yeah, you're always doing that. You're always balancing that. But again, I've tried to set it up each year that we can go into the draft and we can play a game, and the hope is that you're better than you were the year before as of today, or next Thursday when we go to play the game. So if there is a blue chip or generational type talent or something you just can't pass on, even if you maybe already have starters at that position, you don't pass on that type of player. So again, then if you go need based, that's when I think sometimes you can make mistakes at times. So again, I like to go in so you're not backed into a corner where you have to take a certain position, and you can take the best player available.
Joe, I don't expect you to literally answer this question directly, but do you have a pretty good idea, or do you know what's going to happen at 1 and 2 at this point, or are you still in the information gathering process, waiting to try to figure out what's going to happen in front?
Yeah, it's still in the information gathering process. I mean, again, I always tell my guys, when we look at our board or free agency or values that we assume everybody sees it like us, and that's not always the case. So still gathering information. I mean, there's rumors of what teams may or may not do, but what we can control is, hey, come up with 3 players we're happy with and rank those guys, and if they don't go in that order, they go in a different order, knowing who we like best of those 3 players, and that's what we can control. But yeah, still there's still the rumor mill. It's that time of year. It's rumors everywhere. So have somewhat of a sense that I think will happen, but obviously I don't know that for a fact.
Where are you at with trading?
Consensus building work? Like, I'm sure every year when you guys come together for your meetings, that people have different ideas about 1, 2, 3, 4, and
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. Were there a lot more divergent ideas this time, or would you kind of walk in the room and say everybody's got him number 1?
Yeah, so we have the horizontal board, which is it's quarterback, running back, all the way across, offense versus defense, and then we do a vertical stack. So that's where we just did it this past weekend with the scouts. They just left last night, or actually this morning the scouts left, but we finished up our meetings last night, and that's where you get into the the hard conversations, because if these 2 players are there, which is a reality, like they may be there, who are we going to take and why? So there's a lot of respectful debates in the draft room when it comes down to, and a lot of times it's two good players or two players we really like. That's where there's discrepancies in the room, and ultimately I'm tasked with making the final decision. But we'll phone in the coaches and get their opinion if those guys are there, or if it's two positions and we love both players, which position best helps the New York Giants. Like we love both players, it's the same value. Who's going to help us the best. So it's a collaborative process. Scouts do a great job. They're on the road 150 days a year, and they know these players inside and out. And then we bring the coaches in and get their opinion. And if there's discrepancies, which that's what this week and early into next week is, we'll work through, or we'll get the film and watch it together. And okay, let me see if we can see what you see, or we try to coerce them into seeing them how we like them. So it's a good process. It's a good group of people, a lot of good professionals, and the collaboration and communication is very good.
Joe, is John Mara going to Boulder tomorrow with you guys?
John Mara's not going to Boulder.
What does leadership look like to you at the quarterback position?
To me, probably one of the best I've seen is I've been around, or the ones that I've been around, are the ability to motivate and get people to follow. To bring the team up when things are down, and motivate the rest of the group. And we talk about it a lot. You're the face of the franchise, so like people are watching you, all eyes are on you, and your work ethic, how you approach the game, your ability to interact and connect teammates, and across both sides of the ball, offense, defense. I think that's all really important, at that position specifically.
Joe, when you talk about quarterbacks, you talk about discrepancies and, trying to get on the same page. Is it especially important that the organization, that everybody's on the same page if you're looking at a quarterback? And if there is a discrepancy, how do you break that tie, or do you just pass on that player?
Yeah, no, ultimately the decision falls on me. So you go through the whole process, and there are there's been discrepancies in all different rounds, all different positions in many drafts, and ultimately, final say typically goes with the general manager. So ultimately, if there's a discrepancy, and at the end of the day I'm convicted, the decision has to be made. So that's how we do it.
What do you think about with trading up or down from the number 3 pick?
Yeah, we'll be open to all options. I mean, those type of strategy sessions have been ongoing, and talking through different scenarios. So yeah, we're always going to be open to either or of those scenarios.
Have you received a lot of interest from teams looking to trade up?
We've received some calls. Yeah, we've received some calls.
You obviously don't want to be picking a 3 in the future, but in this position, do you feel you can't miss on a player at this point? I mean, pretty much a lot of rankings have Cam Ward going 1, you have Abdul, you have Travis Hunter. I mean, that seems to be a pretty consensus 1, 2, 3. You may differ with that, I don't know. But, I mean, do you think at number 3, if you just sit there and you say we have top 3 players ranked, whoever is there, you feel like it's almost as much of a can't-miss player as possible in a draft? We
like our options. We like who will be there. We like who will be there.
As a GS, this is your 4th draft, right? You haven't had the chance to put in the card for a quarterback yet. Is that an itch? Is that something that GMs, you want to do?
Where we are, yeah. I mean, you would like to have a young franchise quarterback. I think every general manager would be. Everybody wants that. So, but the value has to be right, or it doesn't matter. I mean, you get that one wrong, you just got to get that right. So when you're in a position to get the right one at the right time, that's when you pull the trigger.
Joe, do you know who you want right now? Could that change tomorrow? Could that change on Thursday?
Yeah, we're still we're going to run out the shot clock here. We have until next Thursday, so we're going to continue to keep doing our due diligence. And I think a lot of teams around the league are doing the same thing we're doing right now. They're in meetings, so the phone calls usually pick up early next week when guys are out of meetings and you're getting close to the draft. And we'll continue to make our calls to whether it's college coaches, high school coaches, whatever research we need to continue to do. And again, that's been our process. And
Joe,
we'll do good on Thursday.
Sorry, what's your urgency to find a young franchise quarterback in this draft?
Yeah, again, everybody wants one of those. Yeah.
Do you feel pressure to land one this year?
No, I mean, if there's not one, or you don't perceive there to be one, or it's not available when you pick, I mean, that's out of your control. So, I mean, yeah, we would love to have one. If there's one available, we will definitely take one.
Look at the strength of the draft. I know a lot of people say defensive line is very strong, running back. How do you view this draft as a whole? Like, let's put the quarterback position aside for a second.
Yeah, I think the D-line group and the edge group for us, the outside backers, and D-line is a really deep group. I would say running backs is a deep group. Corners, there's some depth at corners. So, I mean, those would be the ones where, I think there's some good depth. There's some high-end guys at other positions, just maybe not as much depth.
Thanks, Joe.